We will resume our struggle with the speech of CPI.
Today, we and the World Anti-Imperialist Platform stand united in protesting against the NATO Summit currently taking place here in Washington, D.C. We have rallied here for 3 days in scorching hot weather because we truly believe in this cause. We are standing here because we oppose to the fullest possible extent NATO's drive to drag the entire world into a nuclear Armageddon and use people like us as cannon fodder. We are also standing here because we have not and will not forget the unspeakable crimes that NATO has committed in the past. We will never forgive or forget what NATO did to the Serbian people in 1999. How NATO ruthlessly bombed Serbian cities based on a pack of lies, intentionally targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure, including Chinese civilians in the Chinese embassy in Belgrade. We will also never forget what NATO did to the people of Libya. Libya, under the leadership of Gaddafi, was the richest country on the African continent. And NATO bombed them once again based on a pack of lies and removed their leader, turning Libya into a country where a massive slave market exists and where their people are drowning in the Mediterranean Sea trying to escape this disaster. We also won't forget or forgive what NATO did in Afghanistan and how they supported and actively funded a genocide in Yemen by the Saudis. Today, the imperialist NATO bloc seeks to repeat these crimes in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, the Indo-Pacific region, and the Korean Peninsula. In Eastern Europe, NATO countries seek to funnel billions of dollars in military equipment to the Banderites in Ukraine. Many of these NATO countries, like France and Germany, are pushing for direct NATO involvement in the conflict in order to set the stage for an all-out war with Russia and to fulfill NATO's goal of the destruction and balkanization of Russia. In the Middle East, the NATO bloc seeks to support the fascist Israeli regime as it utterly horrifies the world in committing the most unspeakable atrocities against Palestinians, most of whom are children who cannot defend themselves. In the Indo-Pacific region, NATO seeks to prop up the Taiwanese separatists and give them loads of Javelin missiles to set the stage for war and destruction of People's China. And on the Korean Peninsula, NATO seeks to destroy the People's Government in the north by stationing 30,000 American troops in the southern half who conduct numerous provocative military exercises, support the remilitarization of Japan, Korea's former colonizer, and create an East Asian version of NATO. We are here to struggle against the imperialist NATO bloc's drive to war on all 4 of these fronts. We are also here because we understand that if a war breaks out on any of these fronts, those who will fight the war will not be the globalists who cheered for it. It'll be ordinary people like us who are sent off to our deaths. So our presence here should send a clear and powerful message to NATO that we will never accept being used as cannon fodder for the benefit of multi-billion-dollar corporations, weapons manufacturers, and globalists in Brussels. Tel Aviv, or just a mere 2 miles from here on Capitol Hill. We will not rest until NATO is disbanded and their plans for global Armageddon are cut short, and we have created the world that we have dreamed of. A world free of imperialism, exploitation, and war. Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Thank you.
Listen to the slogans again. Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Stop RIMPAC exercise!
Stop, stop, stop!
Stop RIMPAC exercise!
Stop, stop, stop!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
We will listen to the next speech from ASLN.
I'm here today as a patriot of my country, Quebec. I'm here to protest against this terrorist organization known as NATO, who now seeks to expand its reach to Asia. I'm protesting because I don't want to see my people annihilated in a nuclear war. While imperialist propaganda portrays NATO as a symbol of peace and democracy, the vast majority of the people of the world know the truth. NATO only brings death and misery to the world. It brought hell to Korea, it brought hell to Yugoslavia, it brought hell to Libya, and it's going to bring hell to anyone who dares stands in its way. NATO does not exist to defend the peoples of Western countries. It exists to defend the strategic interests of a privileged few, the interest of big capital. Some will say that NATO needs to be in Ukraine to stop the so-called tyrant Putin. But how is pushing NATO further into the east, which is what started the problem to begin with, going to solve anything? Some will say that NATO needs to expand to Asia and to face North Korea, who are supposedly a war-hungry dictatorship. But it is not North Korea who have bombed the Middle East and Yugoslavia to bits. It's not North Korea who do military exercises on the US borders. It is the American who occupies the south of Korea with their troops and constantly threaten North Korea at its border. This obsession of NATO to intervene in all conflicts is going to push toward the world toward a war between nuclear power. The people in the West need to demand the end of imperialist policies of their government. They need to demand that their government leave NATO. And if their government refuses to respect the national independence of other countries, it only means one thing, that the people in imperialist countries do not have sovereignty over their own country. They do not possess genuine independence. Their country is under the control of a class of parasites who do not care about their nation and people. Their homeland is profit. The struggle for national independence in the oppressed countries is directly related to the struggle for sovereignty of the working masses in the imperialist nations. True freedom and liberty lies in the unity of the struggle of the working class and the movement for national liberation in colonized nations. A nation that oppresses another cannot be free. As a patriot, I understand that the liberation of my homeland cannot be fully accomplished in its truest form as long as Palestine is occupied, as long as Korea is not unified, as long as the working masses of the world have not seized what is theirs to take. This is why I'm here today. For this dream to be realized, we need to get rid of NATO, to get rid of imperialism once and for all. Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Listen to the slogans again. Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Stop RIMPAC exercise!
Stop, stop, stop!
Stop RIMPAC exercise!
Stop, stop, stop!
We will listen to the speech from PC USA.
My friends here in DC, I would like to preface this speech with stating the fact that we've been here, and we are staying here. We've been here since the start of this NATO summit. We'll be here till the end of the NATO summit, and we'll be screaming, we'll be shouting, because we know what's right. We'll be speaking our points to the people, because the people need to know what's right. You can hear now that my voice is crumbling, because my voice was the strongest. My voice is the strongest, and your voice can be too. As a person, as a citizen of the United States, you should be screaming this as well. Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
We gather here today looking upon the lawn of the nation's most prestigious building. A building housing many of our glorious leaders going back to the likes of Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Ulysses S. Grant, and even men such as Thomas Jefferson. These men enshrined freedom into our hearts and minds. They saw to it that our beautiful nation should remain untouched by the foreign enemies to our north, our east, our south, and our west. We manifested our destiny and created a land of liberty, where all could theoretically pursue happiness to the utmost of their respective abilities. Seeing this wonderful White House be desecrated by the geriatric men who taint our nation's history with the blood of innocent children makes me more sorrowful than any other. I hope to see a country that our forefathers built was a country of peace, not a country of constant war. We've expanded enough. We've expanded all the way to the western seaboard, conquered the strongest enemies of our nation, and have made peaceful and mutually beneficial relationships with our direct neighbors. This NATO summit being held in our most sacred city is the largest existential threat to the continental United States since the dawn of the Nazi regime in Germany in the 1930s. This organization was built to defend our brothers in Europe from the so-called communist threat, but since then it has become very apparent that this organization seeks only to support the expansionist tendencies of America while simultaneously robbing us of our military resources so that they can uphold whatever social democrat policies in their countries while our homeless starve on the streets. Our American citizens should be the first and foremost in the minds of our politicians, yet we seem to care more about the fascists in Ukraine than our hardest working men and women living paycheck to paycheck. The taxes that come out of all of our wallets are taxes that our founding fathers fought to remain as just as possible. But we're witnessing our pocket change getting lifted as the politicians continue to line theirs with money from the AIPAC bribes. They lie to us all the time, telling us that Russia and China are the enemy, that the Palestinian resistance movement is a movement of terrorists. How can these men and women be terrorists when they are following the exact same method of resistance as the bravest Yankees fighting against the British back in the 18th century? If you are an American against these people's national liberation, you, my friend, would have been a staunch loyalist during our patriotic revolution. We say that NATO is an existential threat because we know that NATO is a warmongering organization of former and current Nazis who just seek to defend every inch of their land from the slightest aggressive action, while simultaneously performing both overt and subtle regime changes in any government that opposes the neoliberal status quo. We here at the World Anti-Imperialist Platform do not support the neoliberal line being pushed by the elite who attempt to hold on to as much power as they can think they can get away with. As a patriotic American, I want my country's military to be spent defending my homeland, not the homeland of a bunch of Europeans. I personally am a man against nuclear war at all costs. And if the Russians want Ukraine, let them have it. The American position should be one of non-involvement, not one of absolute involvement in every foreign affair that we deem to be slightly beneficial to our overall imperialist cause. The American system should function as it did in the 18th through 20th century, where we prospered as a nation that dealt with nations diplomatically, with our policy of speaking softly but carrying a big stick. But our government has done nothing of the sort recently. And in fact, our diplomatic policy has been more akin to swinging our big stick around in the faces of countries who want nothing to do with it. We need to get the hell out of Korea. We need to get the hell out of Japan. We need to get the hell out of Ukraine. We need to get the hell out of every place in the world where we send our troops to occupy. How can we possibly justify our occupation of these countries when it is against both the well-being of Americans as well as the well-being of the global citizens? We are not Great Britain. We are principled individuals who value our American tradition above all else. We are Americans. We are not Europeans. We should be defending our soil with blood, sweat, and tears. And God bless any poor soul who dares attempt to poke the bear, because hell will be brought to their doorstep, just as hell will be was brought to the doorstep of Nazi Germany. NATO is bringing us ever closer to the brink, and I will not stand, and I hope none of you will stand for this absolutely horrid atrocity that is the NATO-backed war in Ukraine. Ukraine is killing innocent civilians and has been killing innocent civilians since 2014 when they launched their aggressive war on the Russian-speaking people of the Donbass. These Ukrainian government terrorists have somehow persuaded the United States to support their endeavors against the Russian Federation, supporting SMO, and have done so well that they've accrued over $175 billion in stolen dollars. That's right, $175 billion that came right out of all of our paychecks and straight into this war machine that is the Ukrainian Nazi army. This money could have gone to roads, schools, buildings, high-speed rail. And yet the NATO warmongers continue to pressure the U.S. to support them. This is wrong. And we should have our national right to say no to this horrible highway robbery that is taking place in this building right behind us. This NATO summit, which is occurring as we speak, is a summit of criminals, funding criminals, to support the criminals who are criminalizing the innocent people of the world. As a proud American, I do not support crime, and I think it is criminal to support the crimes of the apartheid state of Israel, which opposes the people of Palestine every single day. And every day the situation gets more and more dire. So we, as a people, need to stand up to this horrid situation and end the national alliance of global terrorists. Say no to NATO.
No to NATO.
Disband the North Atlantic Terrorist Organization. Death to the secular Zionist state. Disband NATO.
Disband NATO.
Disband NATO.
Disband NATO.
Free, free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Disband NATO.
Disband NATO.
Disband NATO.
Disband NATO.
Let's chant the slogans again. Disband NATO!
Disband NATO.
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO.
Stop RIMPAC exercise!
Stop, stop, stop.
Stop RIMPAC exercise!
Stop, stop, stop.
Free, free Palestine!
Free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine!
Free Palestine.
The next will be the announcement of statement. Spokesperson report, comment 553. Disband NATO, the imperialist aggressive alliance. First, the heads of NATO member countries, including the US, announced the Washington Summit declaration on July 10th. First, initially, targeting the DPRK and Iran. They stated they are fueling Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine by providing direct military support to Russia. While towards Russia, they spouted black propaganda, shattering peace and stability in the Euro-Atlantic area, and gravely undermined global security. In addition, they labeled China as a decisive enabler of Russia's war against Ukraine, and regarding its consolidating capabilities for self-defense. They intensified interference in internal affairs by urging it to engage in strategic risk reduction discussions. Imperialist camp's malicious propaganda towards the anti-imperialist camp aims to construct the so-called justification for the pacificization of NATO. This is revealed through Washington Summit declaration, which blurted out welcoming the continued contributions of our Asia-Pacific partners to Euro-Atlantic security and strengthening practical cooperation. Second, as we are aware, this NATO summit is a war plotting meeting to intensify the ongoing world war into a full-scale military confrontation. The US, Netherlands, Romania, Italy, Germany, and Ukraine decided to provide Ukraine with additional strategic air defense systems. Ukraine's Zelensky, neither a NATO member nor serving as president anymore, attended NATO summit and recklessly urged the allies to allow Ukraine forces to use the US weapons to strike deeper into Russian territory. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg and the US Secretary of State Blinken spewed that NATO and the Republic of Korea will bolster cooperation in defense industries, and that NATO will strengthen cooperation with the Indo-Pacific. Imperialist aggressive forces attempt to prolong the war in Ukraine to exhaust Russia, and that at the same time to expand the Ukraine war to Eastern Europe. Furthermore, war drives to spread the flames of World War III to East Asia have been reaffirmed during this summit. Third, President Yoon Suk-yeol of the ROK is focusing on serving as a war puppet for imperialist aggressive forces. At the bilateral meeting between the ROK and Japan on the 10th, he ranted about the importance of the Camp David Cooperation, which mentioning the Treaty on Comprehensive Strategic Partnership between DPRK and Russia. He also admitted himself that an Asian version of NATO, targeting the anti-imperialist camp, was established through the summit between the US, Japan, and the ROK last August. We can confirm that our ROK war is imminent by the fact Yoon Suk-yeol, who visited the US Indo-Pacific Command on the 8th, will be the sole speaker at the NATO Public Forum. Additionally, the US imperialist aggressive forces utilized the pro-US belligerent forces of the ROK, notably appointing the ROK Navy to the role of Deputy Combined Force Maritime Component Commander for the RIMPAC, the largest multinational joint military exercise involving 9 NATO member countries and pro-US East Asian countries. The disbandment of NATO, the imperialist aggressive alliance targeting the world, is now a common task of struggle for worldwide people. And the defeat of pro-US belligerent fascist Yoon Suk-yeol is the most important task of struggle of the people of the ROK. The people of the ROK and the people around the world shall lead World War III to an anti-imperialist great war through the World Anti-Imperialist Joint Struggle, bringing an end to imperialist forces and their studies, and final advance towards a new world of global independence and peace. July 11th, 2024, in front of the White House, Washington, D.C., Spokesperson Office of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. With chanting the slogans, we will end up the demonstration. Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Disband NATO!
Stop RIMPAC exercise!
Stop, stop, stop!
Stop RIMPAC exercise!
Stop, stop, stop!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
The people united!
We'll never be defeated!
The people united!
We'll never be defeated!